Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to our session on, what is it? It's guidance. One of the things to be aware of is that we will be live on a webinar, just so you're aware, and therefore when we come to questions later on, it'd be important that you wait for the mic. And also there are some live questions which we want to ask you right up front, so if you've got your apps live, that would be quite helpful. So you can start to answer the questions and we'll see what sort of responses we get. Just wait a moment or two while the queue dissipates just a little bit, but we will have to start fairly quickly. Okay, I think we have to start because the webinar's there. We don't want people to run away thinking we've lost them. This is about the guidance guarantee, and we all know that it's coming. We're not all quite sure what it means. There's a lot to do between now and April, and I have a panel of experts here who will help us, one, on the regulation side and where that's going, and that's Maggie. Thank you, Maggie, who advises me she's saving frantically for a pension to ensure she's got a good supply of red wine. And of course, Anne. Anne works for Warburton's, and she's using her skills and expertise there I won't go into baking, but to ensure that people end up with a better pension. And she's quite passionate about ensuring that the effort she puts in now will work, but as everyone else is interested to know where it's all going to fit with the guidance guarantee as well. Hopefully you've all had a chance to get your apps running, and what I'd like to do is move first of all into a couple of questions to warm us up and see where people's views are. Can we move to slide one, please? Okay, just to get us going, it really is quite helpful for us to get some perspective of where the pensions professionals are with regard to planning for the guidance guarantee. So if I could ask you to trigger off the apps and put your responses in, we'll try to gauge where people are at this stage in understanding what they need to do and how things are evolving. Wait a moment or two. In the meantime, my guests are going to get themselves ready for standing up in front of this massive audience, and thanks for everyone for coming along. Not sure, was there something special? Is there a prize at the end of this? All right, so we've got the first answer. It does look like we have a lot of people who are, is it the first one? Yep, already planning to improve support members, which is fantastic news because we are very close to 1st of April. The days will tick away very rapidly. But then there's a large chunk of people who are waiting to see how things go. And thankfully, I suppose, very few are just saying, we'll just wait and see, and do nothing. That's very helpful. The second question is a bit vague, and I think we'd like to move to the second question now. It's, as pensions managers, as employers, it's absolutely important that we understand... Oh, it's too loud. Thank you. It's absolutely important that we understand what it is we're going to do, but also how much of a budget we need to set up to deliver the support that we give to people and in advance of the guidance guarantee. Can you sort of press responses and see where we get to with regard to this next question on costs? How much are you prepared to spend? What is it you think is a reasonable budget, or should you spend anything at all? Okay, that's probably not quite the answer I would like to see, but I think I can fully understand it. Obviously, with the guidance guarantee coming out fairly soon, it's very difficult to understand what you need to do, what you're going to spend, and thank you for that response. Without further ado, I'd like to move on to the sessions themselves and ask Maggie to go along and talk to us about the framework we will have to work with.
Pleasure, Jerry. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much, firstly, to NAPF for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. I will try my best to give you a flavour of what we're doing and what we're not doing. In terms of the agenda that I want to work through, I'll talk a little bit about the fact that the budget changes are a game changer. I'll talk a little bit about the guidance guarantee, what it is, and to some extent what it isn't, and also who's doing what. And I might take the opportunity to maybe just dispel one or two myths that appear to be growing up around the guidance guarantee. Talk a little bit about what we've been doing at FCA and with others, the pensions regulator, DWP, Treasury, where we're at and what we do next. Give a bit of a segue into what Anne's going to say around what it actually means for pension schemes. And then at the end, just try to put it a little bit into context with all the other issues that are going on, because there are a great many other issues going on in pensions at the moment. One thing that I should say, and I will talk a little bit about it, is that we obviously at FCA have recently issued a consultation, and that consultation is closed. Because that consultation is closed and we are currently working through the responses, I am quite constrained in what I can say specifically about what's coming out of that, because it wouldn't be appropriate to talk to one audience and not talk to the whole industry, nor would it be appropriate for me to talk while we're still working through the responses. So I'm not trying to be deliberately awkward, and I hope it doesn't come across that way, but I hope you understand that constraint. So, I feel it's always a good idea to start a presentation off with something that is absolutely blindingly obvious and that your audience already knows, which is that these budget changes are a game changer. So the conversation around what people will do with their pension pot becomes a very different conversation, and indeed it's probably a bit of an eye-opener that we're having conversations at all. I have recently gone to at least 3 dinner parties where I suspect the only reason I was invited was people wanted to bombard me with questions about their pension. That has never happened and is now making me suspicious of future dinner invitations. However, to be more positive about it, I think it is great that people are actually talking about their pension. And I think they're talking about it differently. They're not talking about, oh, I've got this pension pot, how do I turn it into a stream of income? They're now thinking, I have this money, what is the best thing for me to do with it? So I think that is a way forward. We are acutely aware that alternative products will obviously develop as a result of the budget changes. We are also aware that until industry out there has all the technical detail on exactly what the changes are and what they will mean, it's difficult for them to take final decisions on what sort of alternative products will develop. That's something that we are already at FCA talking about and talking to firms about. My colleagues in the thematic teams and in competition are out there talking to the industry, just trying to get a sense of what products might develop and how those might be marketed. It does mean that at retirement there will be more complexity around decision making. There will be more options, therefore there's more complexity, if you can put it at its very simplest, if that isn't a bit of an oxymoron. I do sometimes think we need to be a little bit careful not to overstate this complexity point. Not everybody has one defined benefit, 2 defined contribution pots and a rented flat. Some people out there only have one defined contribution pot, and it is not a large pot. The average might be 25,000 or 28,000 or whatever, but there aren't always a lot of big pots around there. And I think we also need to be careful not to prejudge or judge from our own perspectives what the right decision might be for a particular individual. I was very interested yesterday to hear the Australian experience around the fact that in Australia many people with small pots do take cash, but as pot sizes rise, people are more likely to go for an income type product. So I think, yes, there will be complexity, but we need to just be a little bit careful that we don't get carried away with ourselves here. All that said, people will need help to make the right decision at retirement, and that is where the guidance guarantee comes in. It is not intended to replace financial advice, and I'll talk a bit more about that later. It is intended to give something to help people make the right decision. Okay. A new way of thinking. This is a very oversimplified way of thinking, and these are very oversimple graphs. You can tell I never did mathematics. I did a bit, but I gave up and moved to something else. Anyway, 2 very simple graphs. Back when I was a baby pensions administrator, which was a very long time ago, I was always taught that the thing you had to do was engage people at the start. A huge amount of effort went into trying to persuade people to join the scheme. And that was where a lot of the effort was concentrated. And it seems to me that engagement kind of went down over time from that, because people were either in a defined benefit scheme, in which case they kind of moved through the scheme automatically to collect their pension, or they had defined contribution, and most of them, the vast majority, bought an annuity at retirement. So the engagement was all about getting them in the door. On the other hand now, again, and I accept I'm oversimplifying, but I think it's interesting just to think our way through this, the engagement now is different. We do not have to persuade people in the door. Auto-enrolment does that for us. But on the other hand, and we heard yesterday the lady from Whitbread's talking about this, we then do need to engage people. We need to engage them to keep them in, though thankfully the auto-enrolment stats are looking good. We need to engage them to encourage them to pay more, to encourage them to think about it. And as they move along the retirement journey, we'll need to engage them to think about what they ought to be investing in, what decisions they are likely to take or maybe planning to take. And I accept that asking somebody 10 years out what they're going to do at retirement is a pretty scary question to ask them, other than planning for red wine. I haven't done much in that respect myself. And when they actually retire, there will be decisions to be taken. So I think we need to just kind of have a word with ourselves about how we engage. And I'm grateful to Jamie Jenkins at Standard Life for a conversation that prompted some of these thoughts. That's just in case he's in the audience and thinks I've stolen his idea. The guidance guarantee. I'll talk through the Treasury role first. There are two things I want to cover here. The Treasury's key strategic decisions, having made the key strategic decision to introduce the budget reforms and require the guidance guarantee, the Treasury are the ones who are doing the service design and implementing the guidance service. Now, that then means that they will designate the organisations that will deliver the guidance. Now, this, I think, has created some confusion. I've spoken to many people who have been unclear what Treasury's role is, what FCA's role is, but I do want to make it quite clear. The Treasury have, and I quote them, their hands all over this. It is they are designing the service. They will implement it through delivery partners whom they will designate. What that means in practice is that there will be a single brand for this guidance service. Because I had spoken to people earlier, particularly some on the trust-based side, who thought Treasury were going to designate some service delivery partners and that each scheme would have to choose the partner it went with. It's not going to be like that. There will be different delivery channels, online, telephony and face-to-face, but it will all be branded whatever the brand is, and I'll come back to that in a second. So that whether I go online or whether I phone or whether I see a human being, I will be speaking to the guidance service. And that is quite clear. And I think that's a key point to make people understand what's going on here. The brand is going to be very important, because I think the branding is there not just to make the service look cohesive, but also it'll be a very good way of encouraging people to engage with the service. I'm sorry if I'm labouring that a bit, but I have been a little bit concerned that there were some misapprehensions out there. In terms of who the delivery partners will be and in terms of the actual brand for the guidance service, you need to watch this space, but I'm hoping that you won't have to watch this space for very much longer. In terms of the FCA's role, we have a couple of some things going on here. We were asked by government to develop, to set, maintain and monitor the standards, if you like, the framework within which the guidance service will be delivered. That doesn't mean we develop the detail of the conversation. That means we develop the standards, and that's what we've been doing. We will also collect the levy that will fund the service, and we already have levy collection mechanisms in place, so that makes sense. And we will have to supervise providers whom we regulate, and therefore their interface, if you like, with the guidance guarantee. I'll come on in a minute to a bit more about what that means in terms of trust-based schemes. So, the guidance is designed to help people. It is designed to help people make the most of their pension savings. It is not designed to be financial advice. And perhaps if I just talk a little bit about what it's not designed to do. It is not designed to tell people what they ought to do. That's not what it's for. It's provided through a variety of delivery channels. What we are seeking to achieve is a service which has some relevant personalisation within it, but ultimately leaves the choice in the hands of the individual. So, if I take a few examples. When we say relevant personalisation, we would want people to come to the guidance conversation with some information around their DC pot, and we would hope they would also bring some information and would encourage people to bring information about their own personal circumstances, to the extent of, are you married? Do you continue to work after retirement? What's your state of health like? Those sorts of things. We would expect the guidance conversation to talk to them about the options that are most relevant to them. So if someone has a small pension pot, I would not think it likely that the guidance guarantee will spend a lot of time majoring on sophisticated products designed for people who have pots of £1 million, to be a bit extreme about it. We would expect the guidance guarantee to talk to people about what options they had and about the possible consequences of selection of those options. So, for example, as I said to a friend over dinner the other night, yes, you can take it all out, or you will be able to take it all out in cash if you want, but there will be tax implications. So we are not then going on to say, and you shouldn't do that. That's not what the guidance is about. But it is about saying, these are the sorts of options you have, these are the sorts of consequences. The guidance itself might also make suggestions. It might suggest, for example, that you have quite a complicated or sophisticated set of circumstances, and you might well want to go and take full financial advice. Or it might suggest that you are in difficult circumstances, and you might well want to go and take debt advice. Or it might say, okay, well, you said to me that you think you want to go and buy XYZ type of product, and point that individual in the direction of different tools designed to help them shop around. And I would also very much like to see that the guidance service explains this to people, not in trying to say people, you're not getting advice, you're getting guidance, because real people probably don't understand the fine distinction there, but in saying, this is here to help you, it will outline some options, it will outline the consequences, the decision is yours. So that's what we're aiming at. So what have we been doing and where are we at? We issued a consultation paper and that closed on the 22nd of September. It covers 3 main blocks. First is the actual standards for the delivery partners, which is a bit of a departure from a normal consultation paper for FCA. Second is the proposed rule changes which firms will have to put in place to interface with that guidance. And third is the levy proposals. Now, let me just pick up on that. We didn't just put a paper out there. We spent a lot of time talking to an awful lot of people, both from the trust-based world and the contract-based world. We held a number of workshops at Canary Wharf. My team and I had a number of bilaterals with people right across the spectrum from both trust and contract-based arenas. And I have to go on record here as saying I am very, very grateful to everyone who gave up time, effort and brain power to help us, because it wasn't the easiest of things to do. We didn't have a lot of time to do in it. And if I hadn't had the help and response that I had from right across the industry, I really don't know how we would have managed. I am genuinely grateful. But it wasn't, as I say, just a case of putting a consultation paper out there. We did a lot of work to try to interface with people. We have had 150 responses, which is fabulous in the sense of the number of responses and some of the detail in the responses. It's not so fabulous if you're the team at Canary Wharf who are crunching through them at the moment and trying to analyse it and work out in the themes. There's a lot of work there. And we intend to issue a policy statement in late autumn. I'm not quite sure whether or not we'll be using the government's definition of late autumn, but that may well happen. We are acutely aware that we have to get something out, and we want to get it out as soon as we possibly can so that people can start to plan. That was one of the reasons for having as much conversation and interface as we did, so that we would bring people along with us. However, there are some constraints. We are working with both Treasury and DWP on legislation. So basically, shorn of the real technicalities around legislation, the way it works is this. Treasury brings forth legislation that covers the tax changes in the budget. It also brings forward legislation which basically says FCA must make a rule to make contract providers signpost to the guidance. That's the big piece. It also makes a number of rules and changes to allow FCA to monitor and develop the standards. So effectively, we have had to consult on the basis of legislation that we know is not yet finally through the House and on the basis of which we expect the legislation to go through the House. That doesn't make for an easy consultative process, and it does mean that we can be short in detail in some areas. Flipping across to the trust-based side of the world, the mirror image of that, if you like, is that DWP will then make changes to their disclosure regulations to mirror the rule that FCA will make on the contract-based world. So DWP will make changes to regulations to require trust-based schemes to signpost to the guidance, and TPR will back that up with whatever they feel is necessary by way of codes or guidance or such. And we are working very hard with Treasury, DWP and TPR to make sure that we are all joined up. And we will make sure that the legislation mirrors as far as possible between trust-based and contract-based, unless there is a very good reason not to. It takes quite a bit of fancy footwork to get all this knitted together. We have regular quad meetings, which sounds more glamorous and exciting than it actually is. And there is a lot of legal work to be crunched through here. I hope I'm making some sense here. So what does this mean? I mean, I think there are two broad things, and I'm not touching here on the detail of the tax legislation for the actual budget reform proposals. I'm confining myself to the guidance. The big requirement is to signpost to the guidance. And how, actually one of the things that we're very interested in is also the interaction with existing retirement communications. Because there are two things there. In the kind of negative space, we have to be very clear and very concerned that there shouldn't be any attempt by anyone to undermine or subvert or in some way go round the guidance guarantee. On the other hand, and it was interesting seeing the questions we asked at the start, we are very keen, everybody is very keen, that existing retirement communication that is good does not get watered down or stripped back. I know the Pensions Minister is speaking later on today. I don't know whether he'll allude to it, but he personally has said many times that he knows that many schemes, trust-based schemes and contract, but trust-based schemes do some very good communication, whether it's retirement counselling or videos or DVDs, and I've seen some of the material, and some of it is really spot on. And what we don't want is that to be pared back because the guidance is that's not what it's meant to do. But equally, we have to work out how we make that interface work, how we make hand off and hand back smooth, and how things are able to click together rather than just looking like some sort of bolt-on. So those are the two main areas in which we will need to work. So, other issues and next steps. Our policy statement will come out, as I say, in late autumn. That will pick up on the framework, the guidance standards. We are conscious that it's a difficult balance to consulting on standards, I've discovered. You want to create standards that are high level and are sufficiently sensible. You don't want standards that are so inflexible that you are then unable to change them in the light of future developments. Equally, you don't want standards that are so high level that they say absolutely nothing. And that has been quite a tricky balance to get to. The guidance service will be up and running from April 2015. The only thing I would say about that is that I do not for a minute expect that it will be the same guidance service in, say, 2020. The guidance service up and running 2015, it will have to change. It will have to develop. It will have to develop as we learn more about what customers need and want, about what works best for customers, whether trust-based or contract-based, and it will have to change to develop and take account of future market developments, whether that's the way the market is moving or new products that are coming online. So yes, there will be a guidance service up and running for April 2015, but I would expect that it would change over time. And the other thing I am acutely aware of, particularly as we're working on a lot of it, is that the pension reforms and challenges for April 2015 are both many and complex. We've heard a lot over the last day or so, and we'll hear more over the next day and a half around these pension reforms. There is a huge regulatory focus on charges and on governance, so the pensions guidance guarantee is not sitting there in a vacuum. It's slotting into a very complex area, and there are a lot of moving parts here. I think that's probably enough from me. I don't want to steal any more time from Anne, and I know we want to have time for questions, but I hope that's helped give you an overview as much as I can, and I hope it's also helped dispel one or two myths that I think were out and about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maggie. Really informative about where you are. It does leave us wondering how it's going to land. I think we'll hold the questions till the end. I know there may be questions from the live web stream, so if there's questions out there, please do send them in. At this point, I'll pass over to Anne to tell us about how she's handling the challenges.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. It's really good to see so many people in this room. Probably not quite as many as Bob Geldof's session, but not far short, actually. So thank you, Maggie, for giving us the update and the work you've done so far. I think we all understand how important this guidance is to members. I guess after auto-enrolment, we all thought it was going to be business as usual for a while, but how wrong could we be? One of the biggest changes in the pensions landscape is on its way, and we all need to be ready for April. So what am I going to cover? I'm going to give you an overview of Warburton's and the DC plan, and then take you through the work that we already started ahead of the budget, and linking that into the guidance guarantee and the impact for schemes and providers. And then we'll finish with a few questions, and that's where it's over to you guys. Taking you through the company profile, Warburton's was established in 1876 in Bolton, and is quite a unique business. It's actually managed by the 5th generation of Warburton's, and it's the largest family-owned business in the UK, managed by Jonathan, Brett and Ross Warburton, who are cousins. We currently employ 4,500 people across 12 bakeries and 15 depots. And we're now recognised as Britain's favourite baker, having doubled in size in the last decade. A quarter of every bakery product comes from Warburton's, and we're continuing to expand the business through innovation and new product development. And I'm sure lots of you in this room have seen those products on the shelf when you visit the supermarket. So you'll be able to see from this that we have sites as far as Aberdeen in the north and then down to Newton Abbot in the south. And the geographical locations of all our sites enables us to distribute our products to the whole of the UK. With the new flexibility and the introduction of the guidance guarantee, one of the challenges will be getting out to our sites so that we can provide support to our members. The Warburton's DC plan is a trust-based scheme, and this was set up in April 2005 following closure of the DB scheme to new members. We're really proud of what we've achieved through auto-enrolment, and I really emphasise that we are really proud. We have an overall scheme opt-out rate of 1%, which is an improvement from our staging in May 2013. I think you can see from the membership profile that we have 6% of our members within 5 years of their selected retirement age and 1% that are over. That's 302 members in total, with the largest group being those within 20 to 40 years of their selected retirement age. Whilst many of our members do select the default option, during auto-enrolment in May 2013, 19% of our members actually made investment choices, and that trend has actually continued. The fund has increased from 34.7 million to 59.4 million in October 2014. And each year we write to all of our members and give them the opportunity to change their contributions. And this year, 376 members actually increased their contributions, and many of those were people that had been auto-enrolled. And 24 members increased their AVCs. An investment strategy review is currently underway to ensure the funds are appropriate for the membership profile and also the new flexibility. Earlier this year, we decided to set up an engagement project team with a view to developing a pensions communication strategy to support our members along the pensions journey. I think with any project of this kind, it's really important to have the support of your key stakeholders to make sure that you get the best outcome for members. The project team worked together to develop an engagement strategy with clear objectives, building on what we already do in terms of our communications, segmenting the membership and then considering key themes along the journey through to retirement, making sure that we deliver the right message at the right time. We also considered our membership behaviour, looking at the investment and contribution choices that our members make, and also how they use the tools already available to them. And it was quite interesting to hear Karen Heath's presentation earlier and how the strategy is very much aligned to her thinking. So that was quite encouraging. We've developed an engagement plan for the next 3 years, and the main focus this year is on the retirement and the joining process. I think this became even more important in view of the announcement in the budget and the new flexibility and the guidance guarantee. Making sure that we educate and create a greater understanding for our members is key to them achieving the best outcome along that pensions journey. Our focus will be developing communications with consistent and clear messages, optimising the existing channels, but also identifying where there are gaps and considering alternative engagement ideas. We're also working closely with our engagement manager to see over time how we can measure that, because we want to make sure that over time the outcomes are positive. So, what are we doing next? We've already started to refresh our existing member communications, and I've got an example of some of those communications on the next slide. Thinking about the key messages and themes along the pensions journey, keeping our communications snappy and easy to understand. The Warburton's Pensions booklet will be updated early next year to incorporate the changes following the investment strategy review, the guidance guarantee and the new flexibility. So key to our strategy ahead of April is developing new communications to assist our employees approaching destination retirement, so that they have a better understanding of the choices available to them and know where to go for guidance. So this is an example of refreshing our communications with Pensions Talk. We introduced our own people into the communications, and we did this in December of last year, bringing out key themes and messages, wherein Yorin gave an update on auto-enrolment, the opt-out rate, the choices people had made. Keep on contributing, with examples of what paying different contributions makes and the impact on the estimated fund at retirement. Now Fred is 60, what he needs to do, and we included a to-do list. And then in April, following the budget announcement, we introduced Pensions Talk Budget Special. A key to our engagement strategy was to introduce where you are on the pensions road and what our members need to consider along that journey. This was really the starting point for our new strategy over the next 3 years. We'll be working on segmented communications so that we target each group of members separately. Fidelity, our DC plan provider, provide a wake-up letter 5 years prior to the selected retirement age, then a further communication at 2 years, and then at 6 months provide a more detailed quotation and open market option. The retirement services team are a team of specialists who provide advice on a non or advised basis, and members also have access to telephone support and a website. With the introduction of the new flexibility in the guidance guarantee, Fidelity will be rewriting their communications and signposting members to the guidance. So, what is the impact for schemes and providers of the guidance guarantee? I think following the budget, there's been quite a lot of focus on developing the guidance guarantee model to support DC members through their choices. It goes without saying that pension schemes and providers are having to implement the biggest set of changes to pensions in a century. For schemes and employers, you can see that there are lots to do, and early clarity on the final outcome of the guidance guarantee is successful to the rollout. The cost to large employers can be quite significant, so obviously dependent upon the approach that you take. From a provider perspective, the changes have a greater impact and apply to all of the client schemes. Communications will need to be updated. IT systems will also need updating, all putting a strain on resources. It's estimated that the potential cost could be in the region of £1.5 million, an awful lot of money. So one of the challenges will be, how can all of this be achieved without impacting charges? What is essential to this whole process is that the messages given by schemes, guidance guarantee, provider and IFA are aligned and they work in collaboration to achieve this. Members need to have clear direction and need to know where to go for guidance. The guidance model needs to be flexible, and Maggie certainly talked about that earlier, so that it could be measured over time and tweaked. It's not without significant cost to the pensions industry, so we may need to make sure that we get it right and it's working as it intended it to. Most importantly, the guidance guarantee is about the member, and the member understanding their new pension choices so that they make the right decision and get a better outcome at retirement. And time will only tell. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Very informative, and it's really great to see the amount of effort you're putting into delivering pension support. We'll open to questions, but before we do that, I have one question on the live web, which is fantastic. It's from Ian Richards, and I think it's more for you, Maggie. The question is, will there be constraints on what trustees and providers will be able to say on top of the signposting to help prevent members not bothering to go to the guidance service?
Members not wanting to go to... Yeah. I think that kind of goes back to what I said. What nobody wants to see is anyone, whether it's trust or contract-based or anybody else, trying to subvert or undermine the guidance. And I haven't met anybody in all the conversations, and I've had hundreds of conversations about this. I've not met anybody who's wanting to do that. I think mostly what people are concerned about is making sure that their communications supplement, embellish, add to, fit with, just the sorts of things that Anne's been talking about. So, that is not something that I'm worried about. And I think as the detail of the guidance conversation becomes clearer, and I agree, clarity as soon as possible is something we would all like. As it becomes clearer, it'll be clearer how you actually work with it, I think.
Okay. Well, I have a couple of questions, but is there anything in the audience? If we come to this gentleman in the middle, front, 4 rows up, 5 rows up. Any other questions at the back? So if you quote your name, where you're from, and who
Pete Harris from either Talent or Stoneham Pension Trust, depending on which hat I'm wearing today. Primarily a question for Maggie, which is putting aside the fact that delivering by April will be a massive achievement, and also putting aside what you said about it will develop over time. What to you will constitute success for the guidance guarantee, and how would you propose measuring whether you're achieving that success?
Okay, a couple of points on that. First of all, actually a lot of how it will be measured and what will be success will actually, the Treasury is going to have a huge influence on that as they're the actual implementers of it. There are a couple of things going on there. From an FCA perspective, if you like, once the standards are agreed, we will need to monitor against the standards. So we would want something that shows that the delivery guidance partners are actually delivering to the standards that have been agreed. The other point around how do you measure the success, now there are a number of things going on there, and they need to be developed and they need to be properly thought through. I mean, take-up is one obvious one. Before anybody asks me, I do not know what take-up will go to be, and I have no idea in my head yet of what I would regard personally as successful take-up. But take-up is one. Quality is another, to make sure that the quality is appropriate. The actual service itself might be a third. There's also something about, I think, longer-term trends. So, for example, one of the things that I think people want to see is more shopping around. It does worry me slightly that we don't necessarily have a definition of shopping around, but park that for a minute. I think more shopping around. Now, if 2, 3, 4 years down the line there is more shopping around, one would hope that the guidance guarantee has been part of that. But there will be some areas like that where it will never be possible to prove that it was the guidance guarantee itself that caused that. There could be other factors. So I think we're going to have to develop a list of KPIs or success measures or whatever, some of which will be easier to directly relate to the guidance than others. Does that make any kind of sense for you?
Okay, any more questions from the audience here? Can we bring one down the front here? Thanks.
Hello, Angus Campbell from the Britvic Soft Drinks Pension Scheme. Question for Ms. Craig. You mentioned a levy in your slides, but then didn't refer to it at all. What will that mean to a pension scheme?
That wasn't any sort of regulatory sleight of hand. That was there will be a levy. The levy will not apply to trust-based schemes. Right. So for this audience, you can relax.
Excellent. And then just the second thing is perhaps an observation. And the point I highlighted really clearly was you said that this was not designed to be financial advice. Mm-hmm. And I think guidance and advice feel the same, really. And I just wonder how, the poor end person will think, well, why do I have to do this interim stage if I need to then go to an IFA?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think you're right. Most people, if you use the word advice or they use the word guidance, I think they're the same sort of thing. And they do mean very technical legislative things in our world. That's why when talking about it to people who are not pensions industry specialists, I don't tend to use the labels advice or guidance. I use the examples in the sense that if I am given financial advice, then my financial advisor has a responsibility for the advice that he gives me or she gives me, and has a responsibility for what then happens to me, so that they have a responsibility for that outcome. In this context, what we are saying to people is this is designed to help you make better choices, but the decision is yours. Some people will go on and take full financial advice. Some people may choose just to go for full financial advice and not do the guidance at all. I mean, you can't force people to go to guidance and you can't force people to go to full financial advice. But it does mean that in this new world where there will be more retirement choices, there is something there that will help people understand what their options are and understand what the outcomes of the options are. If they want to go and take full financial advice, they can do so.
Any more questions? We'll go right to the back. Is that Richard?
Sorry about the delay there. We're very full. It's brilliant that we've got so many people in here. Richard Wilson from NAPF.
Hi, Richard.
You said that you've been out and about, and obviously your team are trying to find out across the market what kind of products are being developed. And do you have a sense, because obviously the guidance has got to advise people on what's actually going to be out there, the guidance guarantee. Do you have a sense about what the range and options and choices that will be available in April? And what kind, so that the guidance, because it's a bit chicken and egg, isn't it? The guidance has got to actually advise people on things, or guide people on things that will actually be out there.
Yeah.
And not all schemes and not all providers, as far as I can tell, will be able to bring things to market by April.
Yeah. You stole my answer by using the words chicken and egg. Yes, we have had some conversations. Many providers are talking to us, but they're talking to us, some in confidence, and some they simply don't feel that they have enough detail to be absolutely clear yet about what the products are that are going to come to market. I think also it's important that given that the guidance is not going to give full financial advice, it's not going to say, look, Richard, in your circumstance, you really ought to have an impaired life annuity or whatever. But what we would want the guidance to do is to talk to people about what the sorts of products are out there, explain to them what an annuity does. It provides an income, it gives longevity insurance, you'll never run out of money, what drawdown does, those sorts of things. And I think this point around sustainability of income is something that we would hope that the guidance guarantee would very much bring out. So at this stage, it is a bit early to say, but I do just want to make the point that the guidance guarantee is not going to be saying XYZ product is the right product for you. What it would aim to do is explain what different sorts of products are on the market and the kind of consequences of choosing one as opposed to the other. You know, you can take your money out in a drip feed, dependent on how that works, but you might run out of money. You can buy an annuity. That's what this involves, but at least you would never run out of money. You know, so it's not about guiding people towards a particular product. It's understanding product types and what is available from each product, kind of pros and cons.
I think as well, going back to Maggie's point before when we're talking about the difference between guidance and financial advice, that is the difference.
Yeah.
You know.
You're not recommending a course of action or recommending a particular product.
Okay. We have one question down here, but before we bring the mic down to the bottom front row, please. I'll ask a question of Anne, so she doesn't feel she's been let off the hook. There's a question online which has come through from Jim Aiken, and he's asked the question, will the Warburton scheme be offering members all the new options, and if so, how?
This is really kind of work in progress at the moment for the trustees. With our scheme at the moment, our pension plan provider is Fidelity, and those options through Fidelity will not be available through the scheme. Now, obviously that will depend on what happens in the future, you know, with pressures from trustees and other schemes. Will that change? The answer is we really don't know, and those are the decisions that trustees will have to consider along this journey.
Okay. I'd like to go to one of the live questions that we've got online. Question 3, could you bring that up, please? I'd like to sort of see what the audience's view is and those on the webinar as to what they feel about the process here and decide whether it is going to be an area which evolves. So hopefully we'll give you a few moments to... Will this mean the end, the death knell of the IFA for the general workforce? Who knows? Can we see the response if there's a reply? That's a worrying sign for a lot of people who may legitimately need to get proper financial advice in an environment where things are ever more complicated.
Yeah, and I think from my experience, you know, very few people do go through that advice process. You know, when we're all buying properties, we all speak to financial advisors. Property is a big investment, pension schemes are big investments, and we never, you know, not very many people take advice when they're taking the pensions pot, and that's one of the challenges in terms of rolling out communications to members.
Okay. Good question on the floor?
Yes, Jo Cumbo from the FT. My question's for Maggie. Much is riding on the guidance guarantee to empower and inform people making decisions in a vastly more complex pensions landscape or retirement income landscape from April next year. But I want to know what the regulator is doing, and indeed if you have your eye on what happens to those people who don't take up their right to guidance sessions. What are you doing to strengthen the regulatory environment for people who are at risk of buying unsuitable products? And I do know that the conversation, the Treasury hasn't even yet started talking about take-up. To me, I think take-up is just as important as what's being said. So I want to know what the fallback is, that second line of defence for people who aren't getting guidance.
Okay, well, there are a couple of things there. I think the take-up point is very important. I think the take-up will depend very, you know, there'll be, and one thing that obviously will influence take-up is how it is marketed, for want of a better word, and how people are encouraged to take up the guidance. But at the end of the day, you're right, if people don't want to take the guidance, they won't take the guidance. It may be that some people who don't take the guidance don't take it because they've gone to take full financial advice, so that's a separate thing. It may be that some people don't take the guidance and have just decided that they want to do what they want to do. So the guidance is, if you like, the process. The other thing is what they buy, what they then go and do. If they go and self-execute, buy their own annuity, buy their own product. And that's where the work that we're doing in FCA with colleagues on what the products are and what products are going to come on the market, what those products will look like. Are they good products? Is it innovative? Are they innovative products that are going to work for the consumer? I think that's where that comes in. So on the one hand, you've got a guidance process which you encourage people to take up and you develop over time. And on the other hand, your backstop, if you like, is that you look at what products are available on the market and are the innovative products really bringing in good innovation for consumers.
A question to the far side, yeah?
Yes, Jerry Barfield from Aquila Hayward. I think it's a question for Maggie, really. I think when the government's initial consultation came out, they were suggesting that the guidance guarantee would be supplemented by useful information, like perhaps giving some indication that people might need social care needs in retirement and how much that might cost, and indeed how long people might live for. Yeah. But I didn't see that in the FCA stuff, and I know you're saying it's, you're not designing exactly what's included, but is it your anticipation that they will be providing that additional information just so that people are aware of what might happen in terms of their income needs in retirement?
Yes, we've had a lot of conversations about this. First of all, there is so much in this project that is a balance, and many people I've talked to have said that the guidance guarantee ought to talk to people about long-term care or impaired life annuities or whatever. And I think that's true. I think the guidance guarantee shouldn't be just a conversation that is passive. I just turn up and give it information. I would hope that the guidance guarantee conversation would also be able to alert people to things that they haven't thought about. So if somebody says they're in a poor state of health, I would hope that the guidance guarantee would then say, well, are you aware of an impaired life annuity? At a very simple example. Or, are you thinking about, do you have enough money to live on? Would you think about leaving your DC pot perhaps for later use to provide for long-term care? And all of those things are fine. The difficulty is, where do you strike that balance? You do not want to get to a point where the information that an individual has to take into their guidance guarantee conversation is so incredibly complicated that they've got to fill in a 25-page form and then are completely put off going to have the conversation. Nor can you cover absolutely everything to the last level of detail in the guidance guarantee conversation. Again, because the customer, the member, will have some sort of output from this, but again, you don't want some 25-page report. So there's going to have to be a balance, and that's what I mean when I talk about relevant personalisation. So you wouldn't want to waste time, if you like, talking about very, very sophisticated products for someone for whom that wasn't a practical option. And if someone was in perfect health, you might not want to talk about other things. So there is a bit of balancing to go on there. And I think getting that balance right between what's important and what is not perhaps for the guidance conversation will be crucial. The other thing I would hope is that the guidance guarantee conversation would then be able to help people by alerting them to other tools. So if there are tools on other websites that, or on the guidance guarantee website itself, who knows, about how you shop around and what the tax implications are, and some of the work that has already been done on comparison of annuities. Sorry, that was a rather long-winded answer, but it's quite a difficult one to get right.
Yes, it's a challenging environment for all of us, and there's so many things to think about. So
exactly.
It's going to be quite interesting as to how it all develops.
Yeah.
Now, I'm conscious of time. We haven't got much time. We have a couple of questions from the audience pending. Hopefully they're quick questions. So if far away.
Andrew Hornick, Citibank Pensions. Can you remind us how many people are going to be involved in giving the advice and how you're going to be training the people to give the advice and where they're going to be located? Enormous job.
I'm guessing that's not your area of expertise, other than directing people to...
I think that pretty much comes under my watch this space comment.
Yeah.
I think you need to remember that people will be able to access the guidance online via telephony or face-to-face. We need to, within the standards, we've talked about the need for there to be appropriate levels of qualification and expertise. At the moment, I need to kind of park that one, sorry.
We have the last question. I've got a question online, which I'll put up in a moment as well.
Graham Simons, Council. Just a question for Anne. Have you considered providing financial advice that you guys pay for employees that are approaching retirement? to go along with the guidance guarantee?
It is something that we've talked about. I guess from my perspective, I'll give you an example of some advice I had a long time ago, and that was I had some money to be invested. I invested it, I took the advice, and things went dreadfully wrong. And my advisor said, no, keep it there, Anne, keep it there. I guess I went with my gut feeling and actually took it out. Had I not done that, I would have been in a worse position. So for me, when a company wants to provide for financial support, for financial advice, you're almost saying that company is the best company to give you advice. What if things go wrong for the member? So I do think there is, it's quite a difficult area for an employer or trustees to consider. But I do think as things are evolving, with the guidance guarantee, who knows what will change and how that will change in the future.
I'd agree with you. It's very difficult for an employer to direct people to one IFA. I think you're very nervous about the whole concept.
Yeah.
Could we try and put question 5 up as the last point? Sorry, we're running out of time, but it'd be useful to try and put question 5 up and get a perspective from the audience and see whether there's a view about where this is all leading. Okay, if we've got a result, it'd be helpful to see what that result is. Undecided. I think that sums it up. Okay, I think at that point we'll probably bring it to a close. Thank you very much, and if we thank our speakers in the usual way.